up, everybody? It's your guy Kid Bailey with the Neapoltan Ice Cream Experience. Got another special guest out with me today, and we are doing the usual. We are playing more golf, hitting the balls around, talking through a unique skill set today. It's my guy Kris.
What's going on?
My guy Kris Kinzer. And so in regards to what Kris does, tell him a little bit about, I guess, how we originally met and I guess your job title.
So yeah, I actually met Ked through my wife. My wife and his wife are good friends. We all kind of have the UNC background going, and so I'm a pharmacist, and I service the procedural areas, the ORs, and things like that in the hospitals.
So y'all just saw us. We just finished that par 5 hole. Kids, take your gimmies. But no, man, so Kris, you were telling us more about, you're a pharmacist at the OR and everything. So for the people who don't really understand much about how hospitals work and everything, I guess, can you break down a little bit more around, like, I guess your typical day-to-day and like what teams, I guess, you are providing, the pharmaceutical needs and services for?
So basically, in my role at the hospital, I work Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. The reason for that is that it's so early is because most of the surgeries, they get started really early in the morning. They've got a full day's worth of cases. And so my job is to get there early, make sure that all of the anesthesiologists and anesthesia staff have what they need for the day for each of their cases. And then I'm basically a support role from a pharmaceutical standpoint. If they have any unique cases that they need advice on, and just having curiosities about different drug interactions or administration and things like that, I'm there to help them with anything that they need in that regard as well. So
Got it.
It's exciting for sure.
For sure. So you're actually filling the prescriptions, or like you're delegating that task to someone else?
So the orders that come through are actually handled by other pharmacists in what they call the central pharmacy in the hospital. I do verify some orders, but each operating room has a cart in it that has different drugs that they use commonly during surgeries. And I'm responsible for making sure that those are filled up and that they have everything that they need. And then also, if there is something that they need that is not in there, then I will handle the dispensing of that. But it's mostly just keeping everything stocked and then just being there for them in case they need anything out of the ordinary.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. With, the hours being kind of how they are and everything, I guess, what would you say if you had to name a few? Like, what are some pros and cons you would say about, being a pharmacist specifically, your angle, dealing with the OR and everything?
So I think the biggest pro, at least for people that do want a job where you have your afternoons and evenings off, having the earlier 8-hour day like that is a big pro. And also having weekends off is a big pro. And then to me, it's just, we're able to utilize our license at a much higher level in the operating room versus just what people would typically think of that a pharmacist does, which is, at your retail pharmacy, just dispensing prescriptions for people. So it's a little bit more involved from a clinical standpoint, and I think that that's a big pro as well.
For sure. Yeah, because I'm not going to lie. I mean, I haven't you're the first person I ever met that, you know, has had a pharmacy job that hasn't been at, you know, like your Walgreens or like a clinic or anything. So, gotcha. Okay, awesome. Well, with that being said, how would you say you guys measure success? Is that more so just based around the financial aspect, or like?
So I think it's a few things. The financial aspect and being able to manage, you know, your finances appropriately, I think is a big part of it. But honestly, to me, the best way to measure success is just to have something where you can be proud of what you're doing at the end of the day, and know that, you know, you taking care of your family and you got something to leave behind. And you know, I think everybody just wants to know that they'll be remembered for something. And I think that, you know, making your mark, and at least in healthcare, you know, you impact a lot of people's lives that way. And I think that's a huge part of the success that's involved as well.
For sure. 100% agree there. Yeah, man, so you told us a little bit about, you know, I guess your role and kind of your responsibilities. What's one thing, I guess, you would say that nobody really knows about, you know, being a pharmacist, or just, you know, from your angle specifically? Like, what's something that nobody really knows?
So I think probably the biggest thing that nobody really thinks about is that in a hospital setting, every order that comes through from any of the physicians has to go through a pharmacist, and a lot of people don't really understand that it takes, you know, an extra level of clinical knowledge to be able to make sure that everything that they order is appropriate for all the patients. And you know, that's something that I think is pretty unique to hospital pharmacy, certainly.
For sure. Okay, so would you have said, you know, your younger self would have thought that you would be a pharmacist, or like, how did you get into, you know, this line of work?
So I actually worked at a little small town pharmacy when I was in high school, and I really enjoyed it, you know, small town community pharmacy, and decided that in Mississippi, Ole Miss was the only pharmacy school in the state, so I figured I would just stay around. I decided to do it, and you know, wound up staying in Jackson after finishing school. But totally different line of pharmacy work than what I started in, but you know, that's one of the things about pharmacy. There's a lot of different areas.
A lot of avenues. Very broad. That's awesome. Okay. Well, you know, along with that, how would you say, I guess, the pay is broken down? Like, for somebody just starting out, and then obviously for someone, obviously yourself, you're, you know, a little bit more seasoned, you're a veteran, you know, kind of doing this work. I guess, explain, I guess, the differences there for the people to understand more around, like, if they want to get into this, you know, what it would look like, you know, starting out financially.
Sure. So a lot of the jobs are kind of in the same realm. Most of the time, the retail jobs are going to pay a little bit more than anything in the hospital. And obviously, you know, as you approach manager status in whichever field you're working in, then that comes with a little bit of extra income as well. But pretty much you can average around 120,000. I think is probably the baseline for
to shoot for, or like you're saying, like starting out, like you're kind of getting that as well.
That's pretty much standard for entry.
Oh, okay.
But with pharmacy, you don't have a lot of. It takes a lot of specialization to be able to get to jobs that are going to be, you know, higher than that.
For sure.
So
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. But in regards to, like, realistically, if you do become a manager, like, is $250 unrealistic a year, or like?
Yeah, I would say that probably the top earners are gonna be somewhere around 175, 180 maybe.
Gotcha.
Which, you know, there's good and bad with that, right?
For sure.
You start out at a higher starting point, but your upward mobility is not as high as some other jobs. But it really just depends on, you know, what market you're in, what state you're in, how the pharmacy regulations are in that state, and you can make a good amount of money in pretty much any of the pharmacy avenues.
For sure. Well, man, really appreciate you, taking some time to hop on with us and go over your position and everything. I just had one other really quick question. Do you have any tips or advice for anyone, like any specific certifications to, target, or any, advice in that regard to, become a pharmacist?
Yeah, so I would say that, pharmacy school is 4 years of undergraduate and 3 years of professional school. So you're talking about a 7-year commitment. Now, at the end of that, you do wind up with your doctorate in pharmacy, but they do offer residencies for pharmacists as well. You can do either 1 or 2 years, and in the current job market, because the field is just going to more specialties, I would recommend that anybody who is interested in pharmacy school at least give that an option. It's an extra year or 2 of school, but it can open you up to more opportunities in the long run. I wish that I would have done one. But I do think that when you're considering pharmacy, it's important to keep in mind that, it is a long commitment. It's a lot of school to go to, and that there are certainly other healthcare avenues you can go down with, similar amounts of school. And I think it's basically just, figuring out what you're most interested in and what type of healthcare setting you want to work in and making those decisions. So,
for sure. Yeah. Well, man, again, we really appreciate it, but appreciate y'all for checking us out, and we're finna finish this whole up, and y'all don't forget to subscribe. Peace.